Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Lovemaking. This is where we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. I'm here with my buddy and my partner and my co-host, the entertainment director at Ebony Magazine, Miss S. Tia Brown. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for that beautiful introduction.
Well, I do what I can. I do what I can. So what's on your mind today, Tia?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the Robin Williams suicide death. I think that's on a lot of people's hearts and minds. One of the big things about being a celebrity, when you're truly a talent, you touch people's lives in so many ways with your work that people do have a vested interest in your happiness, your success, and there's true sorrow, right? Like, because you're living vicariously in so many different ways through this person. So a lot of people were surprised that Robin Williams committed suicide, though they knew that he led a very troubled life, right? So it's been no secret. And even though tabloids have become really big over the last decade, people have followed him because of the magnitude of his success, right? So people knew that he grappled with depression, he grappled with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and he also had two very public divorces, right? So, he had a lot going on. Most recently, it was revealed that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So between dealing with that, financial troubles, he just was really literally at the end of his rope. And it's just truly sad that he wasn't able to get help because, he's a big loss to his family, to his friends, and to the world. What are your thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I feel like the Robin Williams saga and the sad way it ended. I think it's perfect for a financial lovemaking topic because we know that for one thing the cost of his divorce has really weighed heavily on his soul. I mean, he here you had a guy who was probably making over $10 million a picture at one point at his peak. And it seemed to have all the money in the world and a huge net worth. I think even when he died, he was still worth 50 million.
Right.
But yet he had all these money problems that led him to have to take roles that he didn't want to take. He was devastated when his new show, I think the new show,
The crazy
the
ones.
Crazy Ones, yeah, the show didn't work out. He had agreed to do Mrs. Doubtfire 2, even though his whole career he'd always said I'll never do sequels. And I think that the big lesson that I took away from this is it actually came from seeing a picture of him in 1981 when he was really at his peak. His career was just getting started. He had just started Mork and Mindy, and he was with Christopher Reeve, who was also one of the biggest actors of the time, and because he plays Superman,
Right.
and so here you have 1981. These two young guys, both fresh out of Juilliard, are at the top of the world. They're both, and you could just tell they're walking through New York City like they're just looking for women, and because all the women love Christopher Reeve and Robin Williams is rich and famous, right? And then they showed another picture of those two maybe 15 years later, and at this point, Robin Williams is older and balding. Christopher Reeve is in a wheelchair. He can't move any part of his body, and it reminded me of how quickly things can change in your life.
Right.
When you're on top of the world, you have to remember that you can easily end up on the bottom, or you can easily end up in a different situation. So while things are going well, you have to continue to be careful and try your best to make good choices, so that if you do run up on hard times, you're still going to be okay.
See, I think it's really important to look at perspective, put a different perspective or a different lens on this. When we know that someone has grappled with addiction and, for decades, and they've been in, facilities for help, and, they just had a hard time managing and developing normal coping skills. For me, the perspective is not about the money being the issue, right? The issue is what makes me happy, right? You're learning to cope with creating happiness and managing crisis using outside things. So at one point it might be a substance, another point it might be money. And I say this not to minimize the impact that a divorce can have, because it's an emotional loss, it's a change in family, not to minimize how the change in your career and choices not going your way in terms of how you envision yourself. But when we talk about someone making $50 million, even if you had to give away $40 million, you can live off the interest of $10 million in a very luxurious manner in any place. So it's really not about not having money. It's really about not being happy and not being able to cope with trauma, hardship, sadness. And I feel like that's the biggest lesson here. Yes, money is part of it, because but the loss for me in that divorce is not just, again, the dollars. It's you lost part of your family, you lost part of your identity. But it's really, really, we have to learn to focus on, and this is with all couples and all individuals, when we get to hard times, how are we going to manage them? You're not defined by what you have. You're not defined by how people see you. You're defined by how you feel about yourself and how you manage anything that life throws your way. So for me, I think that's the important takeaway, right? Because when those guys were walking through the street feeling like they were on the top of the world, they were still the same men. Whether you have $1 in your bank account or $1,000,000, at the core, if you don't feel good, you don't feel good.
Well, I'll say that for men, because our earning potential is such a part of who we are and how the world evaluates us. It's hard sometimes to say that you're the same man when you're broke as you are when you're wealthy. When you have money, when you have fame, when you have power, you feel very strong. Your testosterone levels literally are higher than they are otherwise, and women sense that. Women can sniff that out. They can sniff out.
And I don't disagree with that. So then my question for you is, are you nothing when you just have the dollar in your pocket? Because you have the ability to make more money. But my thing is how you feel about yourself, whether you have $1 or $100, is what translates at the end of the day. Because you always have the ability to make more money. The things that are intangible, self-esteem, your health, you can't control those things, right? You can't control what God has in store for you. So I definitely agree. I'm under no illusion that, people don't want no scrub, as they like to say. But, you really have to dig deep. And this is for women as well, right? Because we're defined by a lot of external factors, too. It might not be finances, even though I would say for African American women, there's a different pressure to be successful. Like now the expectation is in a different way. But definitely by our looks. And that's something you can't control at all. Like you can always make money. You can make money at 90 and you can make money at 9. I'm going to look very different at 90 and there's nothing that I can do about it.
Well, I'm sure you're a very pretty 9-year-old though. But what I'll say is I think we can even go deeper than it being just sort of like, okay, let's look at Robin Williams and talk about how he didn't feel good about himself as a person. I think that the suicide certainly reflects that he had trouble finding his happiness. But I think even deeper, you see a series of tangible, practical personal decisions that didn't seem to really be the smartest along the way, right? And what I'm really seeing, are 3 things. Number one, the divorces. They became very expensive. I think that he should have gotten prenups, so that at least if you're going to give away a few $1,000,000, put a cap on it. I think number 2 were the addictions. Addictions are expensive. Last time I checked, cocaine wasn't cheap, and so he probably spent millions of dollars on cocaine because there's an endless supply of money, endless supply of coke. And then I think the third thing is just financial gluttony, if you will. This idea that I've got so much money that I will never run out of money. And a lot of us have felt this way, whether you're talking about a multimillionaire with tons of money coming from every direction, or just even a teenager who gets his paycheck from McDonald's and he gets $250 and really thinks he's never going to run out of money. The fact is, no matter how much money you have, you can run out. And if you get in habits of spending lots and lots of money to make your problems go away, one day you're going to turn around and look at your bank account and realize that it's empty. And I think that's kind of what happened to him. I mean, there's no reason that, and I think that was a source of his depression as well, where at least friends
developing insight later.
Well, yeah. His friends were saying that he couldn't believe that he, at the age that he was struggling the way he was, and I agree. Right. So that's what I kind of took away from this.
No, and I don't disagree with you in terms of the tangible lessons that we can take away. Absolutely, money management from the top. Prenups are always a shaky thing because when folks are in love and money comes in, we don't know whether or not he had a prenup that maybe mandated some things and maybe didn't cover him some ways. But also, I don't think that people grapple over whether I lost $5 million or $15 million. I feel like it's the loss of my money, which becomes a huge issue. And not to say over the bottom line, it's not great to have more money. But again, when we look at poverty and we look at struggling, when you're a multimillionaire, your hardship is nothing in the realm of what most people can imagine. So while I agree with you in terms of those financial tools, I think we really always have to look at the emotional and mental health base. And the reason why you're not able to make those decisions is because you haven't dealt with some other issues that put you in a space to make more responsible choices in other places. And, overall, it's just sad. And we know that Robin isn't the only person who has had to deal with these kind of hardships and who has contemplated suicide. So, my final and parting words are for those people who think they are at the end of their rope and feel like they've wasted time, they've lost so much. Know that there is another opportunity to redeem yourself and to have the life you want, and the choice is now. You can't worry about what you did in the past. That was yesterday. But you can do something different tomorrow. And to everybody else, Robin Williams still had so many options, right? Even though that show was canceled, people still saw him as a bright star and a man with many years ahead of him. And there are people out there that you should know the same thing. Even if you feel that you don't have options, there are some. Just, you really have to dig deep and decide that you want to make a change in your life. Your thoughts, boys?
There you go. I think you said it all. I don't think there's anything else to say. I think that we can look at any life, good, bad, or otherwise, and no matter how it ends, we can learn from that, so that we can apply that information, that knowledge, to to our own experience. And I think Robin Williams definitely shows us that money cannot solve all of your problems. And I will also say that when you talk about the mental illness aspect, I'm still of the belief that drugs and alcohol have a recursive relationship with mental illness. I believe they exacerbate mental illness by throwing off your brain chemistry. But at the same time, you're right. You have that self-diagnosis, or that what do they call it? When you're self-medication.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
Right.
You self-medicate because you're sad and because you haven't dealt with other issues. And we can speculate in so many ways in terms of what the trauma was. And I always like to say, what someone else perceives as a small trauma can be huge to someone else. So there are many things that cause sadness and depression and cause you to kind of be on this roller coaster of self-medicating and, all of that. So
Right. But I guess the point I want to make on that is that we always assume that the mental illness comes before the addiction, when I believe sometimes the addiction can come after the mental illness.
Okay.
And I've literally seen normal people try a drug for the first time and literally lose it after that one or two tries.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that what do drugs do? Drugs, give you an artificial way to modify your brain chemistry so you have a different outlook on the world. Well, the fact is that you can get a lot of things that drugs give you very naturally. Like if I wanted to make you really happy right now, I could either give you a pound of crack, or I could give you $1 million, right? Or I could tell you something.
Both of those things are highly addictive.
Right. My point is that one is more natural, one is artificial. So what I encourage people to do is really think carefully about what drugs and alcohol can really do to you in terms of modifying the shape of your mind and how your brain actually works. Because what happens is, if you get to the point where you're accustomed to a drug making you happy, then that means that you will probably lose the ability to make yourself happy on your own. You see what I mean? You've given yourself a wheelchair, so you may never actually learn how to walk. Because, what's easier, to find a reason to be happy, to learn to be optimistic, or to just go smoke some weed, right? the weed is probably easier.
You have not developed your own natural coping mechanisms for like hardship and developing your own life skills. We are on the same accord.
There Absolutely. You go. Don't take the easy way out. That's what I say.
Okay, well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this edition of Financial Lovemaking. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.